heart was stolen by jellyfish. This is the best part of all, right? Her heart was stolen by jellyfish and her husband. And somehow the husband won out, and she moved here to Austin, Texas, where it's really hard to study the ocean. We are so excited to welcome to our virtual stage this morning, Juli.
Hey, y'all. Let me just say it is such an honor to be here today. I'm so grateful for this invitation. I'm grateful to everyone at Creative Mornings for inviting me, and to Ben and Brian for being great MCs, to Kim and Ann for being so great on the backside, Marty for helping me look good, Bethany for this incredibly beautiful space here at the Writing Barn, and Henry Invisible, thank you for such an amazing morning. It felt so good to dance a little bit. As you all know, the topic of the conversation today is biophilia, and well, that comes to us from the Greeks, like so many things do. Bio means life, and philia actually means something like goodwill. And Aristotle was the guy who sort of brought, the word philia to us, and he thought about it a lot, and he had sort of three levels of philia, and the first one was like obligation, like you should do good things for other people. The second one was affection, meaning that like you feel like you want to do these things for other people. But the highest level, and the level that I think sort of sets the stage the best for the rest of what I'm going to talk to you about, is this level which includes admiration and respect. So you're not putting feelings of goodwill out there because you have to, or even because you want to, but more because it supports you and provides stability and integrity to your life. The word biophilia really kind of got popularized in 1984 when this guy, E.O. Wilson, published a book called Biophilia, and he's an evolutionary biologist. He spent most of his life looking at ants and the social world that ants create. But once he kind of put the idea of biophilia out in the world, people really started taking it seriously. His idea was that because humans evolved out in nature, we have sort of an innate or even perhaps genetically programmed connection to nature. And this spawned all kinds of excitement actually in the design world. And architects started taking this idea of biophilia into the work they were doing and created places with like higher ceilings and more open to the outdoors. And then psychologists started studying this idea of biophilia, and they found that actually people recovering from surgeries who had a view of nature recovered faster. In terms of mental health, nature helps us control stress. It actually makes us better able to focus. And as little as, it turns out, just 2 hours a week of being outdoors in nature can provide like measurable changes to our well-being. For me, I grew up in Missouri, quite landlocked, and that'll come up in a minute. And it wasn't that I grew up like disconnected to nature. My family, we did stuff. We went to national parks, but like I didn't think much about it until I went on a study abroad program to Israel, and I was pretty miserable because, Israel's in a very contentious part of the world, and some of that contentiousness just bled into everything that I was doing there, and I felt very unsettled by it. So I just took a flyer and signed up for this marine ecology course down in the southern part of Israel in the Red Sea. And they kind of like threw a pair of goggles at us and said, go get in the water. And I stuck my head beneath the waves and I saw something like this. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is this world just teeming with life, like this filigreed architecture and all of these animals that like, I don't even know what their names are. Like, how do I exist on the same planet as all of this wonder? And I basically, within a week, decided like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But life doesn't always go the way we planned it. And I couldn't get accepted to grad school to study coral, the coral reefs. I did manage to get accepted into grad school to study this other kind of beauty. What we're looking at is the activity of single-celled plants called phytoplankton. And this shows how much carbon dioxide they're taking up and converting into sugar through photosynthesis. So just like trees do, these single-celled plants photosynthesize in the ocean. And before we could look at the ocean using satellites, we had no idea that there was so much just swirling and whirling dynamic beauty out there. And so this is what I worked on for my PhD, because we wanted to understand how much carbon dioxide that was being released into the atmosphere from us burning fossil fuels was being taken up by the ocean. We didn't know before we could look at the ocean with satellites and get these beautiful pictures back. The answer is about a third. A third of the carbon dioxide we've burned has been taken up by these single-celled plants. And what's more, 93% of the heat held by that carbon dioxide has been absorbed by the ocean. So without the ocean, our fight with climate change would be a lot harder than it already is. But again, kind of my life took a turn, and I fell off the academic path. It turned out I fell in love. I moved to Central Texas, and I just grew distant from the marine world that had so captivated me earlier. I started writing textbooks, like Ben mentioned, and doing a little bit of freelance work for some magazines, including National Geographic. And I got the opportunity to fact check this article, which is about another problem that carbon dioxide is causing for the oceans. When carbon dioxide mixes with water, it pushes the pH down, kind of a little more acidic. And that makes it bad for things with shells because acidity is corrosive. And so there was this graphic in this article I was supposed to fact check about who wins and who loses in a future acidified ocean. And the top row is the losers, and that was mostly things with shells. But on the bottom row, it said the winners would be, algae and kelp, things without shells, but also jellyfish. And I was like, do we know? I mean, jellyfish are really delicate. Do we know that this more acidified ocean won't hurt them? So I did what, everyone does, and I Googled it, and I discovered, holy cow, jellyfish are monsters. They might be taking over our oceans. They could even be our overlords. And I thought to myself, sure, I've, grown a little bit distant from the whole world of marine biology, but I feel like I would have known it if jellyfish were taking over our oceans. So spring break was coming up, and I said to my husband, can we go to the beach? And he was like, sure, which one? And I was like, how about Alabama? And he was like, okay, why? And I said, because there's a ton of jellyfish scientists there, and I just need to find out what is going on with the jellyfish. So the jellyfish scientists over the next few years told me all these incredible things about jellyfish. They're not just these sort of evil, scary things. They are actually full of superlatives. And I'm going to share them with you, some of the things the jellyfish scientists told me, but I'm going to do it in a little interactive way. So Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me with the limericks. So I'm going to tell you a jellyfish limerick, and then in the chat, if you can, and I hope I can read it, you're going to fill in the last word, and then I'll explain the limerick after that. So here's the first one. Okay. Jellies start life as a dollop, so small its form might call up a shrimp-sized knick-knack or a furry tic-tac, which next turns into a... And let's see. Yes, so many people got it. Polyp, Angel, I see, Vivian, Veronica. Oh no, dollop. Julie, yay, polyp. Yes, the answer is polyp. So, so jellyfish have this crazy, super cool life cycle. And I think you should be able to see my mouse. The medusa is what you know and love. And it makes a little teeny larvae that turns into a polyp, which is kind of like a little baby sea anemone. And the polyps then can grow into a whole field of polyps. So if you look at the picture on the right, that would be a whole field of polyps. But then this crazy thing happens. The polyp slices itself horizontally into a stack of pancakes, and each one of those pancakes pops off and becomes a little baby snowflake baby jellyfish. So you can see how one single larvae can become a whole swarm of jellyfish. And it's for that reason that when we see jellyfish, we often see them in these massive numbers. That can be really, really intimidating. It also makes them really good at surviving out there in the ocean. Okay, limerick number 2. Get ready in the chat. At protection, jellyfish are king. They're known to pack a real zing. In the whole ocean, the fastest motion is a jellyfish firing its sting. Adam got it. Melissa, yes. I can't read. Anne, way to go on the sting. Yes, you guys all got it. Sting. The jellyfish stinging cell is bling. I love bling. The jellyfish stinging cell is like an actual wonder of nature. It's kind of this little capsule that you can see over here on the left side, and it's got a little trigger. And when it like smells zooplankton and also vibrates at the same frequency of the buzzing of a zooplankton, it will fire. And a jellyfish, and it fires out, you can see it has like kind of like spikes and stuff on this thing that shoots out from it. It's called a tubule. And then toxins pump out of the end of it. But the speed, okay, look. Okay, that's 1g. That's the acceleration of gravity. A jellyfish fires its sting at 5 million Gs, 5 million times faster than that. It's insane. There is nothing faster that we've ever found in the animal kingdom. And it's, you know, if you get stung by a jellyfish, it's horrible, and I hope you never do. But it's also, you've been touched by this amazingness. Okay, next. Meeting this jelly would be a surprise, and not just for its fingernail size. The toxin within it can kill in 3 minutes, and it hunts with its 24. Yes, eyes. Yay, Julie Grisham, hi. Anastasia, way to go. Yes, the answer is eyes. So it turns out jellyfish aren't out there just kind of like wandering around. They have incredible sensory organs. In fact, if you see a jellyfish in an aquarium, in between each scallop is basically a little face. And on that face is something they can smell with, they can sense the current motion. They have something like our inner ears that tell them what's up and down and, you know, senses where gravity is. But they also have eyes, and they're all different eyes. But on this jellyfish, which is the box jellyfish, which is the most toxic, there's this little figure here. I hope you can see my mouse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyes on each little face, and there's 4 faces, so that makes 24. And these center 2 eyes actually have a lens and a retina and an iris that closes down in bright light and opens up in dark light. So they are really sensitive to what's happening around them, and they have a lot of control over their movement. Okay, that's the end of our interactive part. The jellyfish scientists also told me that while jellyfish may not be our overlords, their numbers seem to be increasing, at least some places. And this is a map of the world showing in red and orange places where jellyfish numbers could be on the rise. And I was like, I need to go see that. So I went to this place, which is in Japan. And this is Nomura's jellyfish. It grows from the size of a snowflake, that little baby snowflake size, to the size of a refrigerator, as much as 500 pounds in just a year. So I'm sitting next to kind of a puny one that probably weighed around 200 pounds. And this jellyfish, it was seen about every 30 years in the 20th century. So it would be the kind of thing where like a fisherman would tell his son, like, hey, some year you're going to see this giant jellyfish out there. But in the 21st century, this jellyfish has appeared every single year, and sometimes in large enough numbers that they have gotten caught in fishing nets and sunk boats. No one got hurt. But these jellyfish are probably proliferating because of a combination of pollution, overfishing and illegal fishing, and climate change. And so I started to understand that jellyfish aren't just monsters. They're actually messengers. And they're bringing us important information about our oceans and ourselves. I also traveled to the other side of the Mediterranean to a place to the other side of the world, and this is the Mediterranean Ocean in Spain. It's a place called Mar Menor, where the jellyfish are a chronic problem. And every summer, before people can get in the water and swim, these nets, which you can see piled on the dock here, have to be strung across 30 miles of coastline. And you can see here in the bottom picture that they're strung out. And as I sat here on the boat with the guy who actually put the nets out, I thought about what the ocean had meant to me, which was this place of wonder and awe. And when I looked back and shore, what I felt like the jellyfish were telling us is that we were being forced to build our own prisons, keeping us away from the wonder and awe that the ocean has always meant to us. After years of chasing jellyfish, I did this thing that I never thought I could, which was publish a book on jellyfish, because that's an underdog of a story. And I titled this book Spineless, because jellyfish are spineless. But the subtitle is The Science of Jellyfish and the Art of Growing a Backbone, because through the years of chasing the jellyfish and learning about them, I discovered my own voice. And I discovered that what I had to say actually was of value to the world, and that people wanted to hear it. And so they helped me, find my own backbone. After Spineless came out, I finally had the strength to kind of return to this thing that had been denied to me so long ago, which is to work on coral. And so for the last 2 years, I've been writing a book about coral, and it's really important because their story needs to be told now. Coral, unlike jellyfish, which the story was kind of about this wafting between angel and devil in our imagination, the story of coral, and I should say coral are the first cousins of jellyfish. That stinging cell that jellyfish have, the coral have the same thing. But coral's story is really about collaboration and connection, because a coral is not just an animal that survives by eating like we do. It's actually a solar-powered animal. Those single-celled phytoplankton that I was telling you about, that I did my dissertation on, they actually have made a deal with the coral where they live inside of their tissues, like a photosynthetic tattoo. The coral feed the algae the fertilizer that it needs to grow, and in return, the algae gives the coral 95% of the sugar it makes. That is a huge amount of energy. And with that huge amount of energy, the coral are able to build the amazing reef structures that are the greatest green development project our planet has ever seen. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is the length of Italy. And that was all created by these coral, by these animals, these incredibly powerful animals that had teamed up with an algae in order to do it. The reefs of our planet support 1 million species. A quarter of all marine life lives on the coral reefs at some point in their life, and 1 billion people rely on the protein that comes off of coral reefs. But unfortunately, coral live very, very close to their thermal maximum. We don't exactly know why, but when the temperature rises by about 2 degrees for an extended period of time, that alliance, this great alliance between the coral and the algae, falls apart. Already the oceans are 1 degree warmer. I told you the oceans have absorbed 93% of the energy that was captured in carbon dioxide from us burning fossil fuels. When the algae leaves the coral can survive for a little while, but after a few weeks, this is what a reef turns into, basically a boneyard. It's thought that half the corals in the world are already dead. But it's not a total doom and gloom story. There's a lot we can do to preserve the health of the corals that are left, and there are a lot of corals left. So like last summer, when we could still travel, I went to Indonesia and I took part in this rebuilding a coral reef project, this coral restoration project, where just using simple rebar, they're called reef stars, and tying coral on, you can create a network on a reef that's destroyed. And after 18 months, the reef looks like this. You can almost hardly see the rebar structures that support the reef any longer. And after 3 years, you have a reef that looks like this. So there's hope. In the Caribbean, they are creating orchards of PVC trees that hold coral on them, just like ornaments on a Christmas tree, that can be replanted on the reef. They're also doing massive IVF projects. So here's a really quick way to get a lot of coral back on the reef. You take the coral spawn, you fertilize it in little containers, you let the larvae sink down onto these are called tetrapods, is what they're calling them, but they have nooks and crannies where the coral larvae likes to hang out. And then you incubate them in these sort of floating incubators for a few weeks until the coral is strong enough to hack it out there in the world. And then you can put 100,000 coral back on the reef with just in a matter of a month. And in Australia, I was supposed to be on this cruise, but COVID hit right when it was happening. They're actually talking about changing the temperature of the reef by shooting, this is seawater that floats up into the clouds. The salt crystals make the clouds brighter, and it actually reflects solar radiation back into outer space and cools the reef underneath where you've created this. It's called cloud brightening. So there's things we can do. There are ideas out there that we can hold on to the coral that we have, for as long as possible, until we get climate change under control, which is something we really need to do. And this book is due to my publisher in 2 weeks. The title is Life on the Rocks, because things are not great for the coral. The subtitle is Coral Reefs and the Struggle Within. And I called it that because during these years when I've been studying coral, personally, I've been struggling with, at home, my daughter has had a really rough time with mental illness. And I couldn't help, as I looked at the problems with coral and what was happening with my daughter, to recognize these kind of glaring similarities. Largely, coral are invisible to us, as is mental illness. But like coral, mental health is foundational to our well-being. I want to circle back to the Greeks before I end. The Greeks told this crazy story about ancient humans, which apparently who according to the story, had 4 legs. But as humans tend to do, they became very prideful and threatened to upset the balance of nature. So the gods struck these 4-legged humans in half, leaving them with the 2 legs we still have in order to teach them humility. But right now, it seems we've lost our sense of humility. And we are sort of positioned, we have this position of power, but it also feels really precarious. And I think that the lesson of biophilia is that until we reconnect with what we, nature, we can really never feel whole. So I want to thank you guys for your attention and for coming out and for drinking coffee and just being creative out there in the world, because the world needs all kinds of creative solutions. Thanks all. I'll take questions.
Angel's asking, Julie, what are the top orgs addressing this that we can follow or get involved with or throw funds at?
Yeah. So the Nature Conservancy is one of the top coral reef places, and they do a ton of work on coral reef kind of globally. In terms of the United States, the Coral Restoration Foundation in Florida is a really good one. And then Moat Marine Lab is also in Florida as a big foundation to look into. Those are probably the top ones, I would say. One of the problems, with the coral reef community is actually that these sort of lines of funding are not so great, honestly. And there's been, it just hasn't, let me just say it like this. 150 times more funding goes to space than it does to our own oceans on this planet. So it's problematic, but those 3, the Nature Conservancy, Coral Restoration Foundation, and Moat Marine Lab would be the top ones I would suggest. Actually, the United Nations just announced a new global fund for coral reefs. That's going to be a $500 million fund. This is the biggest thing that's ever happened to coral. It got like no press here in the United States, but hopefully we'll start to see more happening because, like I said, the corals, their story is important to tell right now.
Well, the news just started. You've got it going. You got it.
Yeah, right. Start the buzz.
Yeah, exactly. I see that Anne has gotten some links in there, and Rosemary, you added a link. Thank you for doing that. Let's see. Anyone else raise their hand?
I'll jump in with a quick question. Julie,
Ryan,
you mentioned your second book on coral is due to the publisher soon. Do you know a expected publication date?
So we were talking, fall of 2021. And yeah, I mean, as far as my publisher said, like that's still happening.
Awesome.
So, I hope it is COVID, who knows, but she's ready. My editor's ready for me to turn it in January 1st, and I'm ready to turn it into her. So,
that was going to be my next question. Are you ready?
Yeah,
no
ready.
Small feat. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I mean, of course, like I may go home this afternoon and be like, oh my God, the whole book sucks. I have to rewrite it. But I'm in the kind of the final edits of the first draft.
Lauren has asked the question. Lauren, do you want to ask in person or do you want me to read it?
Sure, if you can. I can ask. Yep. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I kind of had like an inside the actor studio style question. You could pick the same profession, but if you could pick another area of nature to study or explore, what would it be?
Oh, so still biology?
Anything, whatever you think.
Oh, that is so hard. I feel like it's taken me so long to get back around to like the corals. I finally feel like I got here. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I just love the invertebrates so much. I feel like they're, like 90% of the phyla on our planet are invertebrates. And yet we're so like vertebrate centric that I don't know if I could leave them. I feel like they're so amazing. Gosh, it's a great question. I have to think about that. I don't know.
I do like how we're being checked along the way here today. Earlier, I was checked that humans might be the invasive species, that we're underrepresenting on the invertebrates now. So we're doing some good level setting.
Yeah, exactly.
We're making sure, yes, invertebrate inclusion is.
Yeah, invertebrate inclusion. I love it.
All right, I see Matt raising his hand. I'm going to ask you to come off mute. Now, it might be our last one. I think we've gone long. So thank you for everybody who stuck around. Matt, go for it.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Julie, so much, first of all, for being here and sharing all this wonderful information with us. I grew up in Florida, so I'm a water baby myself and love the marine life as well. My question for you is more of like the process that you had gone through for a lot of your research. You're obviously very self-motivated, which is very inspiring for people like us creatives that want to go out and do things on our own. I'm just kind of curious as to what your process is whenever you find something, like whenever you were working with the jellyfish and you went and spoke to all these scientists in Alabama and Louisiana and in the along the Gulf Coast there. In searching for these people out, what was kind of your process in looking into connecting with these kind of people of your interest?
Thank you for asking me that question. That was one of, kind of the growing my backbone things that was the most important that I did. I mean, I looked into the scientific literature and tried to find people who I thought could answer the questions I had. And then I would literally email them, and just even before I thought it would be possible to write a book, I said, I'm writing a book about jellyfish and I'd love to talk to you about your work. And it was amazing that people were willing to get on the phone with me or Skype or whatever and talk to me about that stuff. And I mean, you're right. I just kind of pushed my way in. And sometimes I said, oh, I'm going to be in San Francisco. Can I come down to Monterey Bay and see what you've got going on in the jellyfish exhibit? And they would say yes and show me around. And so I think it's a matter of asking. And, some people weren't so great. And there's a story in Spineless about at least this one jellyfish scientist who really saw me as problematic, as kind of like trying to write some expose on jellyfish or something. But as I kept at it and kept coming back to him and asking him questions, he grew to respect me. And that was one of the best things that happened during that working on that book. So I think you have to just try. And generally people do respond with, sure, I'm willing to share what I know. But you're right, you have to be brave a little bit to try. You have to ask.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is getting over that fear and just asking.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love the idea that we all should just write a book so that we can talk to people.
Yeah, right.
Juli, we want to thank you again. Thank you so much for being here, for preparing your talk today and sharing it with us and sharing your limericks. I do want to point out to everyone that we posted Juli's limerick Twitter account. So if you couldn't get enough of those three, there's more about nature that you can get more of. And we've got lots of links that we're going to send in this email. I want to thank all of the Creative Mornings organizers who make this whole thing possible. I know we're going long, but I just have to say thank you one more time to Kim, who's been directing today. Anne is on, she's stalwart for us. I think that's the right word. Did I just use some malapropism? She is our rock. To Robin and to Brittany's also in the chat. I'm trying to remember everybody off the cuff, so apologies. And then, of course, Brian, we're here again at the end of another calendar year, which started out because we sat across from a table from each other and said, hey, you want to do something for this community? And you said yes. So thank you for saying yes. And thank you all for showing up, not only for these events, but for each other in a very tough 2020. Looking forward to kicking its ass goodbye and seeing you in a new year. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being kind to each other, and have a great morning.
Here's to being the light in 2021. Thank y'all. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Love y'all.
Bye, y'all.